Hi everyone, thanks so much for joining me for my presentation at Ashford TLC. I'm excited to share with you some things I've been working on regarding doctoral students in 2018, observations and data. And I am Dr. Maggie Broderick, and I have been here at Ashford for several years, teaching our graduate students in the School of Education. And I work with a wide variety of students in early childhood, teaching English as a second language and all other areas of curriculum and instruction. So thinking about our own students here at Ashford, we should think about ourselves and our students. As faculty members, we may teach on-ground, hybrid, or fully online, just like at other institutions. And I teach fully online. All of my students here at Ashford and elsewhere are completely online students 100% of the time. And some of us may be teaching undergraduate and graduate courses. What I'm focusing on here really is our master's level students, but occasionally you might have an undergraduate student who's thinking ahead and thinking about that doctoral student. So I'm focusing more on people considering a doctorate, but occasionally you do get one of those undergrads who's already thinking ahead. So our students, well, you may have some online master's level students who are expressing interest in continuing forward and getting that doctoral degree, a PhD in EdD or another practical doctorate or some other type of doctoral degree. And a lot of people, if you talk to people these days, it feels like the master's degree is the new bachelor's degree in some fields. So that's something to consider. Our students here at Ashford are a unique population, and they choose online learning for a variety of reasons. I was actually just looking over some of the wonderful things that we have in our CETL Faculty Resource Center, and I was reading about our military students. We also have a lot of veterans, and I hear that on our discussion boards. They mention very often that they've served our country. And you would be very surprised by the large number of military students here at Ashford. And so, of course, that brings unique needs to them. We have students with very special needs as well in our courses. And obviously, they choose online learning. Students choose it because they're busy. They're working professionals. They have busy lives. And we have a very diverse population here at Ashford. If you look at the breakdown of ethnicity and the types of students choosing our programs, especially our online programs, it's pretty diverse, and we serve a lot of people's unique needs. And all of that's important in considering who might be going on to pursue a doctoral degree. So why did I think this was interesting? Well, I've been doing this for a while. I've been teaching online at the master's and doctoral level for about 10 years now. And it's only been about 3 or 4 years at the doctoral level, a little bit more than that, and serving on dissertation committees and as a dissertation chair elsewhere. And throughout those years, I have seen so many people asking, maybe they are asking for a reference to get into a doctoral program, or they're a former student and they want to talk about it. Could I become an online professor as well? Also, in Facebook groups and other places in social media, sometimes you'll see a discussion of somebody saying, hey, I'd really like to pursue this degree. And they have their intrinsic reasons for wanting to study and they're interested, but also it's a job that they're interested in doing. A lot of people really would love to teach online, and a doctoral degree is typically required depending on the field, especially in my field of education. So this is something we really have to consider when we're counseling these students and talking to them about this reality. So all of these kind of phone calls and emails and social media posts made me think, well, what is happening right now? And I looked at the literature, and there's a lot. I had to boil down my list. I had so much stuff. And I have a reference list that's slightly abridged at the end, but it's still fairly long to share with you. And I remembered that in 2008, right around the time I started teaching online, there was a huge project called the PhD Completion Project. And that's 10 years ago. So I thought, well, that's pretty amazing. What has changed and what has stayed the same? And I thought I'd look at it through that lens. So I used some search terms at the university library and looked at recent things, thinking about the doctorate completion rates, doctoral students, things like that. I'd like to see, what kind of literature we see out there today. There is a lot. There's a ton of qualitative studies and some quantitative research studies. This is an ongoing project for me, but I'll tell you a little bit more about some of the studies I found in a bit. So this really huge study in 2008 that was done called the PhD completion project. If you like to geek out on data, you could have a field day. This is awesome. Take a look and you'll see their findings. But I can boil it down to 3 small bullet points here. In 2008, when we looked at our doctoral students and how things were going, women were lagging slightly behind men, depending on the field. And I'm sure you can see how that might be, different fields. We had things like STEM fields at the time in 2008 that were dominated more by men. Ethnic minorities didn't graduate at the same rates with their doctoral degrees as white students did in 2008. And what I found interesting that I really didn't know and hadn't thought much about is how well our international students were doing in 2008, especially in specific fields such as STEM fields, the science, technology, engineering, math. Their graduation rates, if you look at the bar graphs for the PhD completion study from 2008, they were doing amazing. They were really blowing our American students out of the water, especially in STEM. And they graduated on time and with their PhD, their doctoral degree. So that was an interesting finding that I didn't know. So I wondered, well, what has changed? And we can look at it quantitatively and qualitatively. And here's the stuff from 2008, and I mentioned the bar graphs, if you like to look at data like I do. So that's all available at the Council of Graduate Schools website. A little bit more about specific fields. Again, comparing completion rates for your doctoral degree. Some of them are pretty poor, and they looked at it over a 10-year span. So you can see a lot of people finish maybe after 7 or 8 years, but not after 3 or 4 years. And that makes sense to those of us who have the degree. And then, of course, there are those who don't complete at all. And you can see that very clearly when you look at who actually does complete by 10 years. Some of these people don't do too well. So what about 10 years later? Well, a lot of things have changed in the last decade. Demographic changes, learning modalities. I had only just started teaching online 10 years ago in 2008. Wow, have we seen prolific growth in the online programs, especially for your professional doctorates like the EdD programs that I work in, EDD, more of a professional doctoral degree. We see people trying to get those marketed programs degree in 3. I hear that phrase a lot. That did not exist back then as a sort of a saying for how to get your degree in 3 years. Different paths. We have all sorts of ways of getting into a doctoral program that weren't around. And dissertation boot camps, which actually were recommended in 2008 in that study about what would help these rates. And especially with your online programs, we see a proliferation of these boot camps where people get together and they really help you get through those phases of that doctoral degree and kind of get you moving. So that was a recommended thing that they said in 2008 that would help possibly with retention of students and helping them finish up those degrees. And other things have changed. Let's just think about the last 10 years. Job and graduation prospects related to the economy and other factors in our country, a lot has changed. So some things we're thinking about as you look at the qualitative and quantitative literature that I'll show in the lit review a bit later, some things have stayed pretty much the same. They're pretty much mostly dropping out at the dissertation phase, and we all know how complicated it is. Maybe you've gotten your proposal and your IRB and you're doing your data collection and it stalls. Or maybe you just don't even start the dissertation phase. You just finish your comprehensive exam or the qualifying exams and you don't start a dissertation. This hasn't changed much in 10 years. A couple of things here and there, but it's mostly the same. When people drop out, it's usually at the dissertation phase. General types of programs pursued and completed are basically the same, but the STEM doctorate growth has been a lot more, and a slight decline in education doctorates, which I found surprising as someone in that field. Overall, we have seen a large growth in the number of doctoral students, which I bet is not surprising to you. We can see the stats from nsf.gov there if you want to click on that link or copy that to your browser. 2015 was apparently an incredibly prolific year where a lot of doctoral students, I think it was the most doctoral students ever enrolled was 2015 in the literature I looked at. So a lot has changed. We have students who are balancing different professional and personal responsibilities, perhaps more than 10 years ago. They're in an online modality, perhaps, so that's convenient for them because they're busy, but it brings its own set of lifestyle issues. Student loan debt is an enormous issue in 2018. I could do a whole other presentation or write a book on that. And we all know that's a problem. Some of our students are dropping out due to debt. Diversity, we have a much more diverse student body. And as I mentioned before, these are huge issues for Ashford: diversity, equity, military. And I showed you that article on the first slide there about our military students. Our population is changing in general, the age, gender, and ethnicity in the US. I'm sure you've all seen those stats just on our US population. We have a change in student population related to that as well. More doctoral degrees are going to women than in 10 years ago, and more women, especially in STEM fields, than 10 years ago. So other fields might be the same as they were 10 years ago in terms of doctoral degree completion and pursuing a doctoral degree. But in STEM fields, we see more women than 10 years ago, and completing as well. Immigration, another thing I could do a whole other presentation on. We've had a huge change in our policies in our country on immigration lately, student visas, things like this. What will happen as time continues now that we sit here in 2018? As I noted in the 2008 study, it was quite amazing to see the completion rates of immigrant students, of their PhDs, of their doctoral degrees. So will that change now that we're changing our policies in our country? Will we have different issues to think about? And will our American students also do differently? We'll just have to see. Time will tell. But this is an important issue to consider, especially in light of that 2008 study. Learning modalities, we've got a lot more people online. The stigma is changing. 10 years ago, people said, oh, online, I don't know. Is that really, real? Of course it is. We know it is. Programs are evolving. The stigma is changing. We have our degree in 3 programs starting to really be marketed a lot. And there are so many powerful tools that actually weren't even around as much in 2008. We even have faster online collaboration, such as our Google tools and things in the cloud for up to the minute collaboration. What about the economy? Well, time will tell, but 2008 was our crash of the economy, and now things are different. So that's an issue to consider, and I'm going to continue looking at that. With graduation rates, we still see ongoing issues, but more doctorates overall, as we said. Maybe the student expectations will continue to change. Some of the qualitative studies I looked at all kinds of issues with student diversity, thinking about issues with their career goals, with their doctorate, a lot of people wanting to teach online, all kinds of generational issues with millennials and younger, and expectations based on already having been taught online, which maybe we didn't have before. I have a lot of students who were online for all of their degrees. What will our next decade bring? Well, we really have to allow our expectations to continue to evolve, and we have to mentor those students, and that's really what I do. Like I said, they call me, they ask for references, they just want to have a conversation. I just chatted with a student in an early childhood course here at Ashford a couple months ago, and she just wants to teach online as well. And we had a nice long chat about the realities of it. And you have to tell them, what's actually true and how the prospects are for getting a job, and talk about the passion for what they're doing as well. So what can we do to coach them? Be a role model, be a mentor, be accessible. Let them talk to you about it and share your opinion. Show some support, but also be realistic. A lot of people might think that they're going to get some sort of a job that is not actually what's going to happen. And you can also help them with some networking. That is a wonderful, wonderful thing that you can do as a faculty member for our students. So here is, like I said, a very long reference list, and it continues to grow. I will continue to work on this topic because I'm just fascinated in how things are changing in our country, in our schools, higher education, in the world, and especially with our students and in supporting them. So thank you so much for coming to my presentation, and I'm very open to any email or other discussions if you'd like to chat some more. Thanks. Bye-bye.